the immune system, the inflammatory system, you have all health challenges. Which should tell you something right away. Health challenges are a defensive response. They're a protective response. This is very, very important. Health challenges are a protective response. There's two words here that are very important to understand. Health challenges are a protective response. Those two words are very, very important. Okay? Number one, they're a response. Listen to what I'm saying now. Health challenges are a response. In other words, they're the way the body is responding to something. The body's intelligent. It's constantly responding. So, number one, our health challenges are one of the ways the body is responding to something. And number two, it's a protective response, so they're responding to something that's offensive. They're responding to an attack. Our health challenges are the way the body responds to an attack. It's like a country. If a invading plane comes into the country, immediately the Defense Department will scramble the Air Force to meet the invading planes. Or if an army comes in, we never had that in this country, but other countries that they've had happen, armies will come in to invade the other country. Immediately, the Defense Department of the other country will come and attack the invading forces. Well, our immune system is our Defense Department. Our immune system is the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. And the weapons that they use, the guns that they use, the artillery that they use is inflammation. Are you beginning to see something here? What we want to do if we have an invading, our health challenges are a protective response, they're a response to an invading army, we have two options. We can sit down and not do anything and let the invading army come, or we can attack, or we can respond. The body is a responsive system, so it's not going to sit down and not allow anything to happen. Now, when you have a war, you have dead bodies, right? Right? So even if invading force comes into my country and I fight them off, I might be able to fight them off, but I'm going to have collateral damage. I'm going to have dead bodies around, right? The dead bodies are what we call symptoms. The dead bodies are our hypertension. The dead bodies are our pain. The dead bodies are our degrading tissue. And the dead bodies are ultimately our dead body. So what the modern medical model strategy is to take care of the problem, it's to shut down the Army and the Navy and the Air Force so you don't have any dead bodies. Does that make any sense to anybody? If you have an invading force into your country and you have all these collateral damage, because that's what happens when you have a war, right? Are you guys with me here? Okay. You can say, okay, well, we're going to make the Army and the Navy and the Air Force go away, let the invaders come, because then there won't be any collateral damage. That's called anti-inflammatories. That's what an anti-inflammatory is, and this is the core of medicine. The core of medicine is to shut down the body's defensive response so you don't have the collateral damage. When I say, I'm not a smart guy, I'm not a genius, I just say, how about instead of shutting down the defenses, we figure out what's invading, what's coming in, what is the body responding to, and let's work at it at that level. And it's as simple as that. We got to figure out what is the invading force. Now, remember, the invading forces can be imaginary. They can be spiritual in the sense of being disconnected, feeling alone, feeling apart from spirit, from the universe, from the unified field, from God, whatever you want to call it. But I'm only going to talk about physical. What is the invading force from a physical level? How do things get into the body that the body feels like it has to defend itself against? Are you with me? Okay, now, when we talk about inside the body, we're not talking about inside the bones. We're not talking about inside the liver. We're not talking about inside the nose. We're not talking about inside the eyes. When we talk about something getting inside the body, we're talking about it getting into the most important part of the body. We're talking about getting into the sacred space of the body. We're talking about it getting into the part of the body that's responsible for feeding and for oxygenating all the tissues and for detoxifying all the tissues. When we talk about something getting into the body to cause this defensive response, we're talking about it getting into what part of the body? Not the gut. What? Say it loud. I heard over here. Not the cell. The blood. The blood. The blood is the sacred space. And just like behind all health challenges, you have some kind of defensive response. Behind all defensive responses, you have attack into the blood. All defensive responses, which is all disease, which is all illness, whether it's acne or cancer or hypertension or cardiovascular disease, involves something that has gotten into the blood. I call it dirty blood. Okay? Now, when something gets into the blood, this represents a major emergency. The blood is the life. It says it right in the Bible. The blood is the life because it is the blood that feeds everything. It is the blood that oxygenates everything. It is the blood that detoxifies everything. The blood is a fluid system that just runs in a circle. It's called the circulatory system, if you ever heard the term. It starts off at your heart, and it runs in a circle, and as it's running in a circle, it's feeding all of the cells. It's delivering nutrition to all of the cells. It's delivering oxygen to all of the cells, and it's draining away toxins from all of the cells, and it has to be clean. It has to be very clean, but over the course of time, our blood becomes toxic. Our blood becomes dirty. Our blood becomes sludgy. And once it becomes dirty, and once it becomes sludgy, and once it becomes toxic, this is the ultimate attack. And so the body mounts a defensive response. And this is where the defensive response comes from, an attack into the blood. And the only question you need to ask yourselves, if you're not as healthy as you want to be, you're not as strong as you want to be, or if you're healthy and you want to continue to be healthy, is what the heck is getting into my blood that shouldn't be there, and how can I get rid of it? That's all you need to know, right there. It's basically, in science we call this fluid dynamics. It's the dynamics of fluid, how fluid moves, how fluid does its business. The fluid, in this case, the fluid we call the blood. It's basically plumbing. Health is about plumbing. If you can understand your toilet, you can understand your body. At least you can understand health and you can understand disease. Things are getting into the blood. When things get into the blood that shouldn't be into the blood, the body mounts a defensive response. That defensive response is characterized by the word we call inflammation. And underneath all disease, you will find, all health challenges, I don't want to say disease, all health challenges, you will find an inflammatory / defensive response that the body is protecting itself from at the level of the blood. Are you with me so far? Are you with me so far? Seriously? Yes? Should I say any of this over again? Okay?
That all makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Seriously. Okay, good. Well, I want to make sure because I don't want to proceed because I was driving here and I was saying, how can I get this so completely easy to understand and simple? The secret to health is cleaning the blood. The secret to health is understanding how the blood got toxic in the first place and eliminating the toxins. It's as simple as that. Now, in addition to eliminating the toxins, you want to be able to give the body the resources it needs to do its work. And this is very important at the level of the blood because once the blood becomes toxic, the resources don't get delivered to the cells. So here's your body in a very simplistic form. It has a think like a river. You know all cities are always built around rivers, right? Have you ever noticed this? All city, and if there's no river, there's a big problem. They have to do irrigation. They have to bring water to the area. But throughout history, cities have always been built around rivers. So it's kind of like the same way. You have your blood. And then around the blood, you have your cities, except your cities in the blood or in the body are not called your cities, they're called your cells. Okay? All the cells are built around the blood because the blood has to deliver nutrition. It has to deliver oxygen. Another color here. And it has to drain away the toxins. Once the blood becomes sludgy and dirty, that doesn't happen as effectively, and the cells can't do their business. Ultimately, the cells will end up dying, and that's when we get sick. But it all starts right here. So the only thing you need to ask yourself, if you want to be healthy and you want to be strong, is number one, how this thing happens, and number two, what I can do about it. How does the blood become toxic? How does the blood become sludgy, and what can I do about it? All right, with me? Okay. Now, in order to understand how the blood becomes sludgy, and we've got to understand how the blood becomes toxic, we've got to understand how do things get into the blood. The blood is inside. The blood vessels are all inside us. The world's out here. The blood vessels are inside us. How do things from the outside world get inside the blood? Well, you're ahead of me. But there's a couple of ways. There's really three ways. There's really three ways that things can get into the blood. The major, you already, you know the major way, but there's other ways too. If you stick things in through your skin, right, that can go, things go right in the blood, and you got to be very, very careful about things you stick in through your skin. In fact, you should never be sticking things through your skin. And the only times we ever do it is if we're addicted to drugs, or we're doing drugs, or through vaccines, which is another big problem. And that's the big problem with vaccines. If you ever heard about the problems with vaccines, the problem with vaccines is you're now sticking things into the blood. Blood doesn't need to have things, doesn't want to have things stuck into it from the outside. The only things that's supposed to get into the blood are oxygen through the nose and food through the digestive system. Now, we should be breathing clean air. We're not, and that is a problem. But it's not anywhere near as big a problem as the stuff we put into our mouths that get into the blood through the digestive system. That is the key right there. And there's two kinds of things that get into the digestive system, basically. There's the things that the body can use, and there are the things that the body cannot use. The things that the body can use are extremely important, and you need to have those. We call that nutrition. I didn't say food. I said nutrition. Because food is not always nutrition. Should be, but it's not always. Now, that's not necessarily a problem because the body has a purification system that can purify food that's not. We'll get into here in a second. But for the most part, the only thing that's supposed to get into the blood, aside from oxygen that we're breathing in, is nutrition that we're supposed to be eating. Which means that what you put in your mouth is extremely important if you are sick or if you don't want to be sick. I talk about the digestive system, and I talk about food, and I talk about nutrition all the time, but it's not because I'm some kind of foodie, or I'm, you know how there's people out there who tell you got to eat organic, and you have to eat vegan, and you can only eat this kind of food, and you can only eat that kind of food. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're sick. This represents a powerful point of control for taking care of that sickness. That's what I'm talking about. You see the difference? I'm not Mr. Food Guy telling you what to eat. I had a lady last night we were talking to, and she got all mad at me because I was telling her about a certain kind of food you're supposed to eat. And she said, no, you shouldn't eat that food. And she wanted to get into a big debate with me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm simply saying that if you're sick, this represents a major, powerful point of leverage. I love the idea of leverage. Lever is the greatest invention in the world to me, because with a lever, you can move a big rock with a little movement. Leverage is when you have a little action and you get a big result. Your most powerful leverage point for dealing with health is the food that you eat, or the nutrition that you put into your system. That means if you're sick, you want to be paying close attention to what you're eating. That alone will make a huge difference. In fact, just to experiment, you should all be taking what I'm saying here with this experimental mindset. I want you to listen to what I'm saying, but then I want you to go and test this out yourself. And one of the quickest ways you can test this out yourself is to stop eating. That's called a fast. And if you fast and you are sick, it isn't going to be very long before you start to feel better. If you're symptomatic and you stop eating, it isn't going to be very long before you feel better, because when you fast, immediately you stop putting stuff into the system. Now, if you're eating perfectly well and you fast, you're probably not going to notice much of a difference, but if you're eating perfectly well, you're probably not going to be sick in the first place. So if you are sick and you stop eating for a day or 2 days or 3 days, that's called a fast, you are going to feel better. Now, obviously, you have to eat, but I'm just saying to experiment so you can see this for yourself. You say, oh, no, I can't eat. I can't stop eating because I need energy. Remember, for the most part, what we're eating is not nutrition. Nutrition is not the same as food. Food's supposed to have nutrition in it, but the way we've created our food supply today, that doesn't happen. The food we eat today didn't exist a mere 200 years ago, let alone 200,000 or 500,000 or a million years ago when our bodies were growing up on the African savanna. You say, oh no, I only eat potatoes and tomatoes and grapes and apples. They didn't exist when we were growing up. Not the way they exist today. We were lucky to find a little berry or two. There were no apples growing on orchards when our bodies were growing up, let alone hamburgers and potato chips and French fries. So is it any wonder that we're sick? We're putting things into the system that didn't exist when our bodies were growing up. Our body doesn't know what to do with this stuff. So it tries to get rid of it. It tries its best. It tries to stash it away. It mounts a defensive response. It sees the food we're eating as an emergency. It sees it as an attack. It stimulates this defense, this a survival nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. And if it happens once, it happens twice, that's bad enough. But imagine it happening over and over and over again for days and weeks and months and years and decades and a lifetime. How can we not be sick? How can it possibly be that we won't be sick? And the worst part of it all is it begins scarily early. It begins at birth. For most of us, almost all of us, it begins at birth. You see, when a human being is born, when a baby is born, it comes out of the birth canal. And when it comes out of the birth canal, it gets coated with a coating of bacteria, as you moms know. And that coating of bacteria goes into the baby's mouth and into the baby's nose, and it goes down the baby's esophagus and into the baby's digestive tract and comes to rest at the level of the intestine. And it sits in this coating of bacteria, sits in the intestine, and from that point forward, those bacteria become the digestive system's best friends. Those bacteria, which by the way are called what? Anybody know? Probiotics, right? You've heard that term, probiotics today. If I gave this talk 20 years ago, you wouldn't know what I was talking about because we just learned this stuff 20, 25 years ago. At least scientifically, you know, indigenous cultures knew about it, and that's why indigenous cultures all eat bacteria-rich food called fermented food, but that's a whole other story. So the bacteria is supposed to implant into the digestive system, and from that point forward, the bacteria not only help us digest our food, the bacteria make vitamins for us, the bacteria detoxify substances for us, the bacteria talk to our brains and tell us how to think. Believe it or not, the bacteria in our guts tell us how to think. You guys know this? The bacteria in our guts not only tell us how to think, the bacteria in our guts tell us what food to eat. And if you have the wrong kind of bacteria, it'll tell you to eat the wrong kind of food, literally. And so in any case, the bacteria are supposed to come in through the birth canal. As the baby passes through the birth canal, they implant in the gut, and from that point forward, those bacteria become the baby and then the child and then the adult's digestive best friends. However, we know that 33% of babies are born cesarean section. They don't even get this bacterial bath, and in this room more than 33%, because when we were born in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there were more cesarean sections. And for those bacteria to implant in the gut, for those bacteria to take that journey down through the nose and through the mouth into the digestive tract from the birth canal, the mom has to have the bacteria in her birth canal. And if the mom is not perfectly healthy, she's not going to have the right kind of bacteria. And then once the bacteria implant, assuming they do, there's a system in place that sustains and that nurtures and that feeds the bacteria so they can be healthy. The mom contributes this magical substance that the baby is supposed to get. This magical substance, one of its main roles is to nurture the bacteria. What is this magical substance that mom gives baby? Breast milk. That's the major role of breast milk, is to feed and sustain the bacteria. But we know 33% of babies aren't breastfed. And if they're breastfed, they're not breastfed long enough. And if they're breastfed long enough, they're not breastfed for moms who are healthy themselves. You can see how, for the vast majority of us, we're just barely born. We're just barely a day or a week old. We're immediately compromised at the level of the digestive system, which is the main route of entry of toxicity into the blood. And this is why babies are colicky. And this is why babies have heartburn. And this is why babies have eczema and rashes and pimples. All of this represents toxicity into the blood, which is following dysfunction at the level of the intestine, which is following problems at the level of the probiotics. Technically, this universe of bacteria that live in the gut is called the microbiome. And issues at the level of the microbiome underlie all health challenges because this represents the port of entry of toxicity into the blood. But it gets worse than that. Because once the baby is not digesting its food properly, once the baby is not getting energy from its food properly because of this problem at the level of the microbiome, it has problems with energy. It can't get it can't get energized from food because it can't digest the food. So the baby becomes cranky a lot. The baby cries a lot. It becomes a difficult baby. The baby becomes colicky. Colicky comes from the word colon. It's colon is disturbed. A colicky baby is a baby whose colon is disturbed because he's not getting energy from the food, because his microbiome is disturbed, because he wasn't getting the bacteria from his mom, he wasn't getting breastfed long enough, he was born in cesarean section, etc. So we have come up with a way of taking care of our colicky babies. We give our colicky babies high energy substances. Hello. You got it. Exactly. We give our baby sugar. And you give your baby sugar in the form of pear juice or apple juice or Gerber's baby food or toast or whatever we give our babies, popsicles, just to keep them quiet so they can get some energy. Now, sugar is a double-edged sword, because sugar is an absolutely important source of energy. It's a powerful source of energy, but the body doesn't like really powerful sources of energy. It likes slow energy, easy energy. It doesn't like explosive energy. Sugar represents explosive energy. Did you ever get a sugar burn? Anybody been baking pastries and get a sugar burn? It burns hot. If there's a fire in a sugar factory, they got to bring the fire department in from 3 different cities to put the fire out because it burns so hot. It can burn for days at the sugar factory. If any of you guys were ever born in the Midwest or born near farms, they have these big, tall buildings that are filled with sugar. Silos, they call them grain silos, right? And in the grain silo, you don't smoke, right? You don't smoke anywhere near a grain silo because grain is pure sugar, or at least grain powder is pure sugar. And if you smoke near there, you can cause these massive explosions. In fact, sometimes these grain silos will just explode spontaneously because sugar is very explosive. So the body doesn't like a lot of sugar, and throughout history, it didn't even have a lot of sugar. It's only been the last couple hundred years that we've had sugar. Sugar used to be an amazing delicacy. Only the rich people had sugar. Even kings didn't have sugar in the Middle Ages. They were lucky to get some honey. That was the only sugar they had, because sugar is impossible. Sugar didn't grow, first of all, in Europe. In fact, in the United States, when Columbus came over here in the 15th century, one of the great reasons why Columbus was so excited and why the Spanish were so excited is all of a sudden they got a source of sugar, because sugar grew here. Not that sugar refining was an easy thing to do. Sugar refining was very difficult, and they had to actually, that's where slaves came from, is to refine sugar. The whole slave trade, first they tried to get the Indians to do it, and the Indians didn't want to do it, so they killed the Indians. And then they forced people to come over here from Africa to basically to go into these big vats and turn sugar cane and sugar beet into sugar, so that they could take it back to the royalty in Europe, so they could have cocoa and hot chocolate, and they could have desserts, and that's really what the whole founding of this country was about. It was about sugar. Because sugar was very hard to find, but sugar is a good source of energy. But the body doesn't like lots of sugar. So the body has to, when you put sugar into the body has a whole chemical system that kicks in to get the sugar out of the blood quickly. Sugar represents a major blood emergency. Small amounts are important, but very small amounts. In fact, at any given moment, you have about a little over a gallon of blood floating around in your body. 5 liters or so of blood floating around your body. If you're healthy, you have a teaspoon of sugar in that entire gallon, a gallon plus. If you have a little over a teaspoon of sugar, just a little bit over a teaspoon, that represents a major emergency. That's a teaspoon. That's 5 grams of sugar. Most of us, a Hostess Twinkie has 25 grams of sugar in it. Right? A bowl of cereal has 20 grams of sugar in it. A Coca-Cola has 30 grams of sugar in it, depending on how big the Coca-Cola is. You need a little bit of sugar for sure. 1 teaspoon in 5 liters. If you have a teaspoon and a half, that represents a major emergency, and most of us are putting in mega teaspoons, especially at the level of babyhood. Now, the body has evolved. The body's beautiful. It's responsive. It can handle things. So it has evolved a system, a hormone system, that will take the sugar out of the blood. Anybody know what that hormone is that takes? Exactly. So insulin, so you put sugar in. The baby is now cranky. Remember, back to our story here about the baby. The baby's not getting energy from food correctly, so we give the baby sugar to give it a little bit of energy. Baby gets all happy for a little bit. In fact, he's bouncing off the walls, basically. And then insulin comes to the rescue. Insulin's like the fire department, and it pulls this fiery stuff, this explosive stuff, out of the blood. Now the baby's cranky again. So what do? We give it some more sugar. Exactly. right? See where this is going. So then insulin comes to the rescue and pulls the sugar out of the blood. And now the baby's cranky again. We give it more sugar, and on and on and on this goes. And this goes all through childhood, and this goes into teenagehood. Now remember, the body has a defensive system. The body has a protective system, and all of this sugar represents a problem. All of this sugar represents a danger. So the body's defensive stress management system now comes into play. The body's stress management system is amazing. It's designed to get us away from out of a jam. It's our defense department. It's our protective department. It protects us from lions and tigers. It will protect us against this high blood sugar and low blood sugar and high blood sugar. I call it the high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster. It will protect us against that just as well as it will protect us against a lion, or just as well as it will protect us against toxicity. It will protect us against anything. And the high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster represents something that the body has to protect itself from. So protective chemistry, protective chemicals start to come into play. Now you have two little pieces of tissue that are sitting on somewhere around the middle of your body here that are your stress management department. There's two little pieces of tissue. They're called glands because they produce hormones. A gland is a structure that produces hormones. Anybody, by the way, know the gland that makes insulin? The pancreas, that's right, just as an aside. So you get two little glands that make this emergency chemical that's designed to handle this high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, and by the way, any toxicity that gets into the bloodstream from food, which sugar represents a toxin. That's a whole other story. But the high blood sugar, low blood sugar represents a danger. The body has a hormonal system that comes out of the adrenal glands that help us handle this danger. What is the name of that hormone? Anybody know? Say it louder. Cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that helps us handle this danger. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing we got cortisol. Cortisol is an amazingly important hormone. But under conditions of danger, the body will respond in the same way, whether it's high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, or whether it's a lion. It has the same kind of response. And what is that response? Well, one of the ways the body will respond to the high blood sugar, to the cortisol, which comes from the high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, or that comes from a lion or tiger, or whether it comes from your credit card bill. Same response. Whether it's coming from your credit card bill, or your lousy job, or a lion or tiger, or the high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, same response. And it's a bunch of different things. For one thing, when cortisol comes to the rescue, your blood will start to redirect itself to your legs and to your arms, away from the outside part of your body so that you can run. So when cortisol comes to the rescue, you're going to be kind of wired. Think of having too much coffee, if you ever had too much coffee. That wiring represents a redirection of the blood flow. Also, the pressure of the blood will start to rise in order to get more blood to the muscles. So your blood pressure will start to rise in response to cortisol. In response to cortisol, your digestive system will shut down. You won't be able to digest your food. Remember, our whole problems began because of problems with the level of the digestive system. Now we got even more problems because when cortisol rises, your digestive system is going to shut down. Why would it be? The body's not stupid. The body's incredibly intelligent. Why would it be that the digestive system would shut down in response to exposure, or prolonged exposure to cortisol?
No blood around the stomach.
Why would that be, though? What's the purpose of that?
The
That's true, but what's the purpose? Why does it make sense to shut down the digestive system when you're running from a tiger? Because you don't need it. Exactly. You're busy running. You're not supposed to stop and eat lunch. You're busy getting out of a situation, right? So under the response of cortisol, the blood pressure will go up. Under response of cortisol, your digestive system will become suppressed. Under the response of cortisol, your fertility system will stop. Why would that be? You're not needing to make babies. You're getting away from a tiger. Under the response of cortisol, overexposure, long-term exposure to cortisol, the blood will go from the front of your brain, where you have wonderful ideas and you make really good decisions, that's called your prefrontal cortex, to the back of your brain, which is called your reptilian brain, where you're in fear. Under response of cortisol, you will feel fear, and you will make bad decisions. The blood will get redirected to the back of your brain. Under conditions of cortisol, you're going to be very anxious, because it's productive to be anxious when you're running from a tiger, because you've got to get away from the tiger. Under conditions of cortisol, under long-term conditions of long-term exposure to cortisol, you won't be able to fall asleep because you're not supposed to fall asleep when you're running from a tiger. Under long-term conditions of cortisol, your body's immune system, your defense system will slow down, will become suppressed, and you'll be more prone to getting colds. You'll be more prone to getting illnesses. You'll be more prone to getting cancer. Because when you're running from a tiger, you don't need an immune system. You got to run from the tiger. Under conditions of cortisol, all of our health, long-term exposure to cortisol, all of our health miseries ensue. Under conditions of cortisol, your thyroid will start to, long-term exposure to cortisol, your thyroid will start to slow down. Hypothyroidism is the end result of long-term exposure to cortisol. Once the thyroid slows down, you are off to the disease races because the thyroid regulates everything. And as many of you people know in this room, hypothyroidism is an epidemic. And there's nothing the doctor can do about hypothyroidism. They can give you all the Synthroid you want, all the thyroid hormone you want, and it doesn't work. How many of you guys are on Synthroid? Has it helped your hypothyroidism? No, it has not. What's that? Since you were 8. This is the medical model at work. So, you know, just as a little digression, what's your name, ma'am? Phyllis has been to the doctor for her thyroid since she was 8 years old. It hasn't helped her thyroid. But she goes back. But you go back. The doctor says, I got to see you every month, right? If your toilet was plugged up and the plumber said, I can't do anything for your toilet, but I need to see it every month, and I got to check to make sure I still can't do anything for it, you think he was crazy. You said, what are you talking about? But we do this with the doctor. He's not going to do anything, but you got to go back all the time for your thyroid. He hasn't helped your thyroid. Because your thyroid is slowing down following the excess amounts of cortisol, following your messed up blood sugar, following your digestive distress, which followed the breakdown at the microbiome, all of which leads to toxicity into the blood, and this condition goes on and on and on. For Phyllis, did you say Phyllis? For Phyllis, from the time she was 8 years old. For many of us, if not 8 years old, from the time we're 20 years old or 30 years old or 4 years old, for the rest of our darn lives. And we have become bamboozled into thinking that this is a medical issue. Did I say anything complicated here yet? Did I say anything that requires a medical degree, some fancy medical terminology or medical biochemistry or something fancy to understand? It is hard to understand. It is not hard to understand. It is very simple. It's tragically simple. It's heartbreakingly simple if you're sick. Nobody has to be sick. All you got to do is start to work backwards here. So the first thing you do is you work on your digestive system, always. And you do it by fasting first. I call that hitting the reset button. That's where you just clear the decks. This is for anybody who's ill, from acne to heart disease. You fast for a couple of days. Now, you're going to feel better when you fast because for most of us, we've been putting toxicity into the blood through the digestive system for decades, for a lifetime. So once you fast, you're going to feel better. It may take you a day or two before you start to feel better. Some people feel better right away, but within a day or two, you're going to start to feel better. In fact, for a lot of people, they don't even want to eat again. And have you ever experienced this? Anybody ever fasted in this room? And when you start, is it hard to, like, when you have to eat again, it's hard to eat again because you don't want to eat again. You feel so good. You know you're not going to feel good. Your body's telling you you're not going to feel good when you start eating again. So you're going to have to eat again, obviously, but for a couple of days, it's just giving the body a break. Giving the intestine a break, giving the digestive system a break, giving the immune system and the inflammatory system, which are chronically activated, a break, calming everything down. Then when you start eating again, you eat very carefully, and you write down in a book everything you eat. By eating carefully, I mean you eat just one kind of food. And you can start with your favorite food, because usually your favorite food is going to be the problem. And there's some very interesting reasons for that, but nonetheless, for most people, their favorite foods are going to be a problem. If you want a shortcut, dairy is usually a problem for people. Grains are usually a problem for people. And I'm talking all grains, not just gluten, just grains in general are a problem for people. Seeds and nuts can be problems for people. Legumes, if you ever heard the term legumes, that can be a problem for people. Beans and peas, as well as peanuts. Peanuts, by the way, are not nuts. They're legumes. They're beans. Lectins can be a problem for some people. Lectins are plant defense molecules. Here you go. Plant defense molecules. You know, it's very interesting. We have a lot of vegetarians and a lot of vegans, and I'm all for vegetarianism and vegan if that's what you're. I'm not a vegetarian or vegan, but I don't eat a lot of meat. But interestingly, meat doesn't have anything toxic in it, but plants do. Because plants Nature doesn't want its plants eaten, especially the seeds. And so plants and seeds have defensive molecules, chemical defense weapons, chemical weaponry. And this chemical weaponry is designed by nature to punish the animal or the intrepid eater of that plant, the foolish eater of that plant, so that animal won't eat the plant again. And most of the time it works with animals. Doesn't work with us. We keep eating it. And those plant defensive molecules are called lectins. The most famous one is called gluten. You probably heard of gluten, and that's a lectin. But there's many other lectins. So you can go gluten-free if you're still exposed to these lectins and you're reacting to them. You can still have a problem. And this is why gluten-free is not a solution for a lot of people, although gluten is a problem for most people. Gluten is a really interesting lectin or plant defensive molecule that glues, gluten, that glues your intestine, sticks to your intestine and disturbs the intestine, causing things to get into the blood. And that's a whole other story. So lectins can be a problem, and you're not out, if you're a veg. I have people say to me, but I'm a vegetarian, but I only eat salads. Well, it doesn't matter because the plants, the salads, the vegetation can be a problem for you. So that's why you have to do a food diary, because you have to see what your body is responding to, what your particular battle is, what your specific enemies are. And you want to write it down. You don't want to try to remember it. You want to write it down in a book. So you'll fast for a couple of days, you get yourself a food diary, and the first day you'll just eat oatmeal. If you happen to like oatmeal, that's what you eat. Or you'll just eat peanuts. If you happen to like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, just eat peanuts. And instead of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, just have peanuts. Or instead of a chicken Caesar salad, just have chicken. Or instead of lasagna, just have noodles. Just try to be simple with your food so you can isolate what the problems are. And it's kind of cool because for the first few days you get to eat ice cream all day. You get to eat, you get to eat whatever it is that you like. You get to eat it all day. You're not going to want to eat it, chances are, because what's going to happen after you fasted for a couple of days is you're going to start to notice things you never noticed before. It's like things go under the radar when they happen all the time, but when you take a break from food, you hit the reset button and clear the decks, and then you start putting things back into the system, they become much more noticeable. You're going to start to notice things that you never noticed before. Oh my God, every time I have French fries, I feel crampy. Every time I have bread, I don't feel so good. Every time I have corn, I have constipation. You're going to start to notice things you never noticed before, and you want to pay very close attention. You want to listen to your baby. Remember, your body is your baby. You want to pay attention to your baby. Just like a mother pays attention to her baby, we want to start paying attention to our body as if it's a baby. And once you fast, things are going to be much more noticeable to you. And then what's going to happen is, you're going to write in a book, you go look at this book, and all of a sudden you see, oh my gosh, every time this happens. Every time that happens. And then you start to eliminate foods. That's called the elimination diet. Okay? So you got a fast, you got a food diary, and you've got the elimination diet. And then after you can do it for a couple of days, and then go back to your regular way of eating, and then do it again a week later, or 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later. You don't have to do it all at once. Because the most notable, the biggest problems are going to be the ones that you notice right away. And you're going to be fine-tuning it and refining the system over the course of the weeks and the months. And eventually, you're going to come up with foods that are problems. You're going to be eliminating those foods. You're going to have a menu of foods that you can eat from. And then once you start eating normally, then you start to work on your digestive health with supplements. And as well as dietary strategies. And there's wonderful supplements. What do you think the most important supplements are going to be for the digestive tract? Where does the problem all begin? Probiotics, exactly, and fermented foods, because the whole problem began at the level of the probiotics. The whole problem began at the level of the microbiome. Hang on just one sec. And so you get on a probiotic supplement. We have a wonderful probiotic supplement. And by the way, I didn't even tell you that we're doing, how many guys are doing longevity here in this room? Okay, so at longevity, what we do is we simplify the whole nutritional process for you. Nutrition is going to become very important here. There's a lot of things you can do with nutrition. The most important of the nutrients are the probiotics. We have a wonderful probiotic supplement called the Nightly Essence. Get yourself on the Nightly Essence. Do 3 to 9 capsules of it every day. That's going to be to support the microbiome. And along with it, do fermented foods. You guys know what kimchi is, and sauerkraut, and miso, and tempeh, and fermented beets, and anything fermented. There's a great book called The Art of Fermentation that teaches you how to make your own fermented foods. You go to Trader Vic's or Whole Foods or health food stores, you can find wonderful fermented foods. Enjoy your fermented foods. Now, there's fermented dairy and there's fermented veggies. Those are the 2 main classes of fermented foods, but fermented veggies are the best because you get the veggies in addition to the bacteria. I'm sorry, sir, you had a question.
What are prebiotics?
Prebiotics are things that help the probiotics. The probiotics are the bacteria,
Are they
but
necessary?
yes, I'm going to tell you about those in a moment. Okay? Probiotics are the bacteria themselves. Prebiotics help the bacteria work better. The most important of the prebiotics is fiber. And so in addition to the probiotics, you want to make sure that you're getting enough fiber. And the best way to get fiber is to make your own fiber. Vegetables will get you fiber. Fermented vegetables will get you the probiotics and the fiber, but make your own fiber just to make sure that you're getting fiber. Fiber does many, many things for the body. It's especially important for clearing things out, especially for women. It clears out excessive toxic hormones, especially toxic estrogen. But for our discussion here today, the fiber helps the bacteria work better. So I grind my own fiber. I make my own fiber by grinding up seeds. Grind up flax seeds or grind up chia seeds. Also, veggies are great fiber. You guys know what a Vitamix is or a Ninja. If you buy one of these new high-power blenders, the Ninja is cheaper than the Vitamix. The Vitamix is a little bit better. You can make your own fiber vegetable juices. Now, vegetable juices don't necessarily have fiber in them. So the vegetable juices are not always fiber-filled, but with a Vitamix, you get the fiber. And so it's a great way to get your fiber as a prebiotic to support the activity of the probiotic. Also, to support the health of the digestive system, you can work at the level of the stomach and use digestive enzymes for that and apple cider vinegar. We have a product called the Ultimate Enzymes. Make sure you're using apple cider vinegar with your meals. You can also use something called stomach bitters. If you've ever heard of stomach bitters, this can help you make or help stimulate digestive juices to support the digestive system. So work on digestive health. Do a fast, a food diary, elimination diet, use probiotics, use fermented foods, use fiber, digestive enzymes, cider vinegar, all of these are good. Well, last thing for supporting digestive health, there's many more things, but the last thing I want to talk about for supporting digestive health is eat as little as possible. Food and eating are overrated. You don't need a lot of food, especially as we get older. Eating is a young man's game. Okay? It's not for older people. As we get older, by older I'm talking about over the age of 40 or 50, certainly the 60s and 70s, eating is as little as possible. The less you eat, the longer you will live. Cultures that don't eat a lot of food will end up live a lot longer lives. Now you need nutrition, but remember, food is not nutrition. So I'm not talking about nutrition, I'm talking about food. Food represents work for the body. Food represents a loss of resources because it takes resources for the body to process food. You don't need a lot of food, and you can test this out for yourself. Next time you're really, really hungry. Hungriest you've ever been. In fact, even just wait all day to eat. Just wait till the end of the day to eat. You're really, really hungry. And go make a meal or go to the restaurant and get a meal or whatever you do to get your meal. Put it in front of you and pay very, very close attention as you're eating your food. And pay very close attention to every bite that you eat. And what you'll notice is, if you're paying close attention, is that no matter how hungry you are, the hungriest you've ever been, after 3 or 4 bites, you're not even hungry anymore. And then you're going to have all this food sitting there that you paid for, or that you made, and you're going to eat it anyway. Exactly. Because you paid for it, right? Or it's there in front of you, right? Now, it's sort of funny, but it's not really funny because we get sick because of it. We get hypertension because of it. We get acne and heart disease and cancer because of it. We get autoimmune disease because of it. So yeah, it's kind of ironic and funny and interesting, but it's tragic too. And then we go to the doctor to take care of us, and he doesn't take care of us. So focus on what you're eating and try to eat as little as possible. When you're making your food in the kitchen or you're going out to the restaurant to get food, just make as little food as you need. A couple of bites, stick it in the freezer. And don't be afraid if you have to throw it out, you have to throw it out. It's better than you're going to throw it out either way. You're going to throw it out by putting it into your body, or you're throwing it out by putting it out of your body. Because the excess of food is not being used, it's essentially being thrown out even if you're eating it. Another thing we do is we eat mentally. We don't eat based on our stomach. I lost 50 pounds a couple years ago. When I was in my 40s, I started to gain weight. Anybody relate to this? You know, I was skinny my whole life, and then all of a sudden I was in my 40s, I wasn't so skinny anymore. And it happened gradually. First I was like, what's wrong with this scale? But there was nothing wrong with the scale. It just kept going up and up and up, right? So I decided, I kept happening, and I was like, there's got to be something going on here. And finally, my pant size went like this, and then like this, and like this, and then I was about to go into like a 42. I'm a 33 or 34. I was about to go to a 42. I was like, no way. I got to take corrective measures here, because a 42, man, that's pretty big, right? And so I did this little thing. And I noticed that every time I would notice when I was hungry, where I was hungry from. And I found that most of the time I was hungry from here, not from here. So I did this thing where I would only eat if I was hungry from my stomach, not from my head. And it turned out that I was hardly ever hungry from my stomach. I was mostly hungry from here. And so simply eating based on what your belly is telling you will allow you with ease, if you just keep concentrating on what your belly is telling you, to eat much less food. In fact, there are many times where your belly is yelling at you not to eat. You'll find if you're listening to your belly's saying, please don't eat. And the mind tends to override it. In fact, we are so mental when we eat, we'll say things like, oh, that sounds good. Because we're eating from our ears and we're eating from our brains, not eating from our bellies. The price we pay for not eating from our bellies, not eating from our bodies, and eating from our minds is problems that we have from food. So just place your attention into your body and notice. And you'll notice most of the time you're not hungry from your belly. Most of the time you're hungry from your mind. You're hungry from your brain. I'd lost 50 pounds just by constantly putting my attention back into my belly. Every time I thought I was hungry, and I found that most of the time I wasn't even hungry at all. Most of the time I was just hungry here. So eating from your belly is another great strategy for helping, for controlling your appetite. Eating less food or paying attention to your belly when you're eating will also allow you to eat less food once you're preparing a meal. Protect the digestive system with probiotics, protect the digestive system with digestive enzymes, apple cider vinegar, etc. The second point that you want to address is the blood sugar system. Remember, this is all illnesses, people, all of them. Now, the blood sugar system is very interesting because diabetes affects 1 out of 3 Americans, either diabetes or prediabetes. And diabetes is just a word, by the way. Doctor will tell you, oh, you're not a diabetic, because in order for you to be an official diabetic, you have to have a certain number. But many of us are diabetic or have messed up blood sugar, even if we haven't met the official criteria for being an officially diagnosed diabetic. In fact, you can tell you have blood sugar problems if you have any symptomology that doesn't go away. That is a chronic, long-term, progressive illness, whether it's a skin problem, autoimmune problem, nervous problem, dementia, whatever, you have a blood sugar problem. Doesn't matter whether the doctor diagnosed you as a diabetic or not. Assume you have a blood sugar problem if you're symptomatic. Just assume it. And so what you want to do is you want to start to control your blood sugar. How do you do it? Well, the first thing you do is you don't eat as much sugar. Now keep in mind, sugar is not just sugar, it's also bread, it's also pasta, it's also rice, it's also potatoes, it's also cereal, it's also bagels, it's also pizza. If you like it, it's probably sugar. Because we're hardwired to go for sugar, number one, and number two, sugar is very cheap. And we have a food system that's based on economics. I travel a lot, and if anybody travels a lot, you'll find that it's very difficult to get a food that's not sugar. Unless you have a supermarket, it's almost impossible to find food that's not sugar. And by sugar, I'm talking starch, I'm talking bread, I'm talking pasta, I'm talking potatoes, because it's very cheap food. It's subsidized food. And so it's really difficult to get away from sugar. So you got to kind of hack into your sugar drives. One of the best ways to hack into your sugar drives is to eat more fat and protein. Now you got to be a little bit careful with protein because protein gets turned into sugar if you're not using it. So if you're trying to go paleo or trying to go Atkins, you're eating a lot of steak or eating a lot of hamburgers, you're eating a lot of eggs, the body is very efficient at turning your dietary protein into sugar. It can do it very efficiently. So if you find that you're trying to lower your blood sugar and you're not eating a lot of starches and you're not eating a lot of bread, chances are pretty good you're eating too much protein. So you got to start to reduce your protein as well. Now, if you're working out, you're an athlete, or you're recovering from surgery, or your protein needs are higher, then you got to eat a little bit more protein. But for most of us, we're not working out, we're not athletes, we're living sedentary lifestyles, and we're not necessarily recovering from surgery. Our protein needs aren't higher, so we're overindulging in the protein. So you got to be a little bit careful with the protein too. Fat, on the other hand, can be a very, very effective satiety, satisfaction-inducing food substance, and that is a wonderful way. Eating more fat is a wonderful way to help lower your blood sugar, but you got to be very careful with fat. You got to eat the right kind of fat. You can't eat processed fat. You can't eat fried fat. You can't eat cooked fat. You want to eat natural fats, avocados and eggs, and fish and quality dairy if you're eating dairy. There's ways that you can get your good fats, but you got to make nuts and seeds. There's ways that you can get your good fats, but you got to be very careful. You don't want to cook your fats. You don't want to roast your fats. Butter is also a good fat. So by eating more fat, anybody heard of the ketogenic diet? The ketogenic diet is a high fat, low carbohydrate, moderate protein, low-calorie diet, and it's the ideal way to eat. High fat, low carbohydrate, moderate protein, low calorie. The biggest mistake, the two biggest mistakes people make with the ketogenic diet is they eat too much protein. Protein gets turned into sugar, and they eat too many calories. The ketogenic diet, Ketogenic, ketogenic diet. High fat, quality fat though, not French fry fat, quality fat, high quality fat. Coconut oil is a great fat too, by the way. High fat, low carbohydrate, low carb, moderate protein, low calorie. Now, protein is going to be the little tricky part because protein gets turned into sugar, but protein is very efficient at becoming very satisfied. So they say moderate protein, you're going to have to determine what that is for you. Okay? The key is the low calorie. That's really the key, and the high fat is also important. That's the ketogenic diet. Also, there are incredibly valuable nutrients for helping your body process sugar and utilize sugar. The most important are probably something called vitamins. The B vitamins are urinated out when you drink a lot of, or when you go to the bathroom, and if you're drinking more water, the more water you're drinking, the more you're going to urinate out your sugar processing vitamins, your B vitamins. So if you're drinking lots of water, make sure you're replacing your B vitamins. If you want to stabilize your sugar also, make sure you're using your B vitamins. There's lots of ways to get the B vitamins. You can get the B vitamins from fresh vegetables and fresh fruits. Those have good sources of B vitamins. Meat is a good source of B vitamins. Eggs are a good source of B vitamins. But to guarantee you get the B vitamins, I recommend you find a B vitamin powder. And we at Longevity have the best B vitamin powder. In fact, it's not just a B vitamin powder. It's also an electrolyte powder, and it's an all-around mineral powder. It's just a wonderful nutritional powder. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The BTT, Beyond Tangy Tangerine. And it is I've been formulating products now for 30 years. It is the most exquisitely formulated nutritional supplement I've ever seen in my life. It is, costs you $50 a month, something like that. And not only is it important for helping you stabilize your blood sugar, but it's important for just giving you all-around nutrition and energy. And helping you eat intense calories because you're getting nutrients without having to get food. Remember, food doesn't provide nutrition. These aren't the same words, food and nutrition. And by using the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, you'll get the nutrition without having to get as much food. So one of the first things that happen when people get on the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is they lose weight and they notice they're not eating as much. But for purposes of this discussion, I like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine because it's so packed with the B vitamins, which are important for sugar metabolism. The two most important B vitamins probably for helping your body process sugar are vitamins B1 and B3. In fact, B3, anybody know what B3 is called?
Niacin.
Very good. You know all this stuff.
I'm a biochemist.
Oh. Are you a physician?
Not in MD,
That's awesome. Have I said any, what's your name, Doc?
Deb Patterson.
Nice to meet you. Have I said anything that is incorrect in any way, shape, or form?
Nothing.
Okay, it's all straight up, right? Very good, though. Niacin. Niacin is I'll see if you know this one. Niacin, vitamin B3, is one of the vitamins, but it is the most unique of all the vitamins. You know why it's the most unique of all the vitamins? Okay, the definition of a vitamin is something that you have to have from the outside that your body can't make. Niacin is the one vitamin that is so darn important for your body that your body will actually make it if you don't have enough of it. But you can save your body's resources by taking in niacin from the outside, and niacin is extremely important for helping the body process sugar. We have a product called Ultimate Niacin, which is a timed release niacin, and that can also help your body process sugar. Niacin is really important for the brain. In fact, as it turns out, there's a way that we get niacin that is a real toxic way that we get niacin. And it turns out that because niacin is so important for the brain, that when you have brain diseases or mental illnesses, you're going to find yourself gravitating for this toxic form of niacin. It's not exactly niacin, but it's similar to niacin. And it turns out that many people who have schizophrenia and psychotic disorders are self-medicating with this toxic form of niacin. Anybody know what this toxic form of niacin is? It's called nicotine. Nicotine. And schizophrenics and people who have psychotic issues and mental health issues are way more prone to be smoking cigarettes than regular folks because they're actually self-medicating with a toxic form of niacin. Give them niacin. A guy named Dr. Abram Hoffer actually treated schizophrenia back in, you ever heard of Abram Hoffer? He was one of the first guys to come up with nutritional supplement therapy. He actually treated schizophrenics with niacin. Niacin can help you for folks who are dealing with social anxiety disorder and mental health issues. One of the classic signs, you know what the 4Ds are? Have you heard of the 4Ds, pellagra? One of the disease that's caused by niacin deficiency is called pellagra. Anybody hear of pellagra? Pellagra used to be a terrible disease that happened down south a lot because people who were working down south used to have niacin deficiencies because they were eating lots of niacin-poor foods, especially corn, niacin depleted food, so they would get niacin deficiency diseases. One of the signs of niacin deficiency diseases is you get redness around your neck. They used to call these people rednecks. Yes. Yeah, one of they call it the 4Ds. The 4Ds of niacin deficiency are diarrhea, that is digestive problems. Niacin deficiency can cause all kinds of digestive problems. Dermatitis, redness around the skin and rashes. Dementia, mental health issues, rotting brains, hallucinations, deterioration of the mental faculties, and finally death. So niacin is not only important for helping the body process sugar, it's important for mental health issues, it's important for folks dealing with dementia issues or movement disorders associated with brain health issues, for people dealing with unexplained rashes and redness in the skin, and also for digestive health issues. Niacin is a fabulously important treatment. We have a product called the Ultimate Niacin. Just for this discussion, purposes of this discussion, it's important for sugar metabolism. Selenium is also important for sugar metabolism. If you're dealing with any of these issues, our Ultimate Selenium can help you take care of that one. And then finally, the two most important, also zinc is very important for sugar metabolism, but the chromium and vanadium. The two most important that I was going to tell you about are chromium and vanadium, and we have a product called the Sweeties, which is like a must-have for anybody dealing with dysglycemia. I don't like saying diabetes because diabetes is a diagnosis. Dysglycemia just means messed up blood sugar. So the second point that we're talking about, we covered the digestive system. The second point is the blood sugar system. The easiest way to lower your blood sugar is to not eat the sugar, not eat the pasta, not eat the bread, not eat the potatoes. If you want to hack into those drives for those kinds of foods, go ketogenic. Eat more protein, eat more fat, and in addition to reducing your sugar intake. A couple other miscellaneous things you can do. Fiber helps suck up excess sugar. So making sure you're doing fiber with your bread and your pasta and your potatoes if that's what you're eating. And also water can help you dilute your blood sugar. But keep in mind that the more water you drink, the more you're going to lose your B vitamins and your electrolytes. So make sure you're doing your Beyond Tangy Tangerine water. And then chromium, vanadium, the Sweeties, the Ultimate Niacin, the Ultimate Selenium, etc. Then we come to the third point, and that's the cortisol. That's the stress hormone, and that's really the jumping off point to all of these problems that we talked about, the infertility, the depressed immunity, the digestive problems. By the way, constipation is a classic sign of excessive amounts of stress hormone. So I don't need to tell you about constipation because it's almost like an epidemic, and it's largely the end result of excessive amounts of cortisol, excessive amounts of defense, excessive amounts of stress, excessive amounts of this protective survival response. So lowering the cortisol is extremely important, and there's many ways to do it. One of the simplest ways to do it is by giving the body what represents something whose deficiency represents the biggest emergency of all. What is the biggest emergency of the body? Yeah, lying's an emergency to the body, for sure. The wrong kind of food, sugar is an emergency to the body. That goes without saying. Stresses of all kinds are emergencies to the body. That's for sure. But what's the number one emergency to the body? What represents the number one emergency? What is it?
You die.
No, there's no emergency there. You're dead. Right. What is it that tells the body it's going to die? That's a good point. What is it that tells the body it's going to die? Anybody get panic attacks in this room? Yeah? Oh, raise your hand if you get a panic attack. Okay. Who does not get panic attacks in this room? Anybody want to get a panic attack? You want to try getting a panic attack real quick? I'm going to show you what it's like to get a panic attack. So you can experience what your neighbors, your friends, people you care about, if they have panic attacks, you can experience what it's like to get a panic attack. You don't have to do it. I'm just going to tell you. Okay? If you want to experience a panic attack, simply try to hold your breath. And what will happen, and you'll know, by the way, who said they have panic attacks in there? You'll know before you get a panic attack that you're not breathing. You'll notice that. Okay? And that makes it worse, which is a clue for you right there on how to not get a panic attack. So if you want to experience a panic attack, try to hold your breath. And you hold your breath, you can hold maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. After about 15 or 20 seconds, your body's going to say, okay, now it's time to breathe. And you go, no, I'm not going to breathe. And so it'll go another 10 or 15 seconds, and your body's going to go, I said it's time to breathe. And you're going to go, no, I don't want to breathe. And so you go another 5 seconds, and your body's going to yell at you, breathe. And you go, no. And at that point, you're going to start to shake. You're going to get really hot. You're going to get very, very anxious. And you're probably at that point, you'll probably have to breathe. But right before that, you are going to experience a panic attack because your body is going to think it's about to die. And your body will do everything it is. And that's what a panic attack is when your body thinks it's going to die. And it follows a lack of oxygen. Now, most of us don't have a lack of oxygen that's bad enough to cause a panic attack, but most of us are experiencing a lack of oxygen that is enough to initiate an elevation in cortisol, stress hormone. And that happens for lots and lots of reasons. One reason is we simply don't know how to breathe. Another reason is because of toxicity into the blood, keeping oxygen from being delivered into the cells. Another reason is from a long-term activation of cortisol, which causes a problem with oxygenation as well. So if you want to lower your cortisol, the fastest way to do it is to breathe. And when I say breathe, I mean both ways, inhaling and exhaling. They're both important. In fact, what do you think is more important, the inhale or the exhale? The exhale. Exactly. The exhale is where, I don't want to say it's more important, but the exhale is where the cortisol gets lowered. In fact, simply by going like this, you will lower your cortisol. You can actually feel your body relaxing when you go, do it right now. Can you feel how your body relaxes when you do that? That represents a drop in cortisol simply by going, Now, it's kind of like when you're scared, you know, somebody jumps out at you, you have a surprise party, or somebody jumps out the door at you or whatever, you go, right? And then you go, It's the inhale and the exhale. The inhale is actually activating the stress nervous system. Are you trying to tell me something here?
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell me it's time?
If you don't want to miss your flight.
I don't want to miss my flight. What time is it?
About 10 after.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. All right, so let me go real quick here. So the third point is to make sure that you're breathing correctly. Focus on the exhale. When you, by the way, if you have a smartphone, get an app called My Calm Beat. It has a little graph that shows you how to breathe. It shows you how to inhale and shows you how to exhale. There's another one called Bio Breathing, and you can actually visually see how to exhale and how to inhale. If you want to, if you find yourself in any kind of hypercortisol state, anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, a panic attack, a constipation, that's another great thing that elevated cortisol will cause, any digestive health issues, before you eat, lowering cortisol by practicing breathing will support all of these activities. In fact, before you eat is one of the most important times to reduce your cortisol. In fact, cultures all know this, indigenous cultures and religious cultures all know this, before they eat, before religious people eat or indigenous cultures eat or traditional cultures will eat, they will do something very powerful for lowering their cortisol. It's called saying grace. Being grateful will lower your cortisol. Being appreciative will lower your cortisol. Being with somebody or something that is more vulnerable than you will lower your cortisol. That's why we love babies. Being with a baby will lower your cortisol as long as that baby's not screaming. If the baby is just being a baby, it will lower your cortisol. In fact, when they come home from Iraq, when soldiers come home from Afghanistan or Iraq, their cortisol is way high because they've just gone through day-to-day life-threatening experiences. Their cortisol is really jacked up, so jacked up that if you just snap your finger, they'll jump. So what do they give the soldiers when they're coming home from the war? They give them a puppy to pet. Just being with a puppy will lower your cortisol levels. They find when they give puppies and kittens to people who are in nursing homes, they live longer. They have an extended lifespan because they're lowering their cortisol. Listening to a rhythm will help lowering your cortisol. Listening to your, not even just breathing, listening to your breathing without even doing anything, just listening to the sound of your breathing will lower your cortisol. Any kind of rhythm will lower your cortisol. Listening to a metronome, listening to dripping water will lower your cortisol. Listening to ocean waves will lower your cortisol. Listening to anything that happens in a rhythm will lower your cortisol level because the body loves rhythm. Remember the old movies where the hypnotist would take the watch and go, just doing that will lower your cortisol. Just watching something go back and forth will lower your cortisol. So anything you do to lower your cortisol is going to improve this stress response, this emergency response, this survival response, this protective response that the body has learned to be under because of excessive toxicity entering into the blood through the digestive system, because of lack of energy coming in through the digestive system, because of excessive entrance of sugar into the digestive system, and because of an amped up stress response from just the way we live our lives, from our credit card bills to our jobs to the government and the New World Order and all the other aliens and all the other things that we have to stress about and all the other things we have to worry about. So I wish I had more time because there's so much more to talk about. But the take-home message is this. If you are not as healthy as you want to be, if you want to be healthy, it is not a medical issue. The word med comes from middleman. Med means middle, like medium or median. Now, I don't want to rip on doctors here, but the medical model is like the priests of old. In the old days, the priest would say, oh, don't worry about God. We talk to God for you. You just give us your house and give us 10% of your income, and we will take care of God. You go about your business, live your life as you want, and we're going to get you to heaven. We talk to God for you. How silly that is. But today, it's because we don't believe in that silliness. Instead, we have different kinds of priests. They're called doctors. And the doctors say, don't, you eat whatever you want. You live your life whatever you want. We'll just take care. We'll give you this little drug, and then we'll give you another drug. Take care of that drug, and we'll take out this organ, and you just come see us all the time. We'll take care of you, no problem. See, we don't believe, we're too smart to believe that silliness about priests. So now we have modern priests, and we call them doctors. Priest yourself. Take care of your own business. This is not complicated. I haven't said anything complicated yet, and health should be that way because it's in the body's nature to be healthy. We heal when we cut ourselves. In fact, you all know this. Every time you cut yourself, you heal, right? There's nothing special that happens. The cells come to the area. They close up the cut. You get little collagen fibers. Everything closes up. 2 days later, you don't have a cut. It's even better than that. Do you know the bone heals stronger at the point of the break? It's not only do we heal, not only do we have healing built into us, it's the body heals even better if we do it correctly. But we got to do it correctly. You got to eliminate the toxicity. You got to put the good stuff in. You got to get on a good nutritional supplement program. And that's really what we stand for at Longevity. Yeah, we got the best supplements you're going to find. It's a very tricky thing to know how to supplement correctly. You can go to the vitamin store and you can be overwhelmed by all the different vitamins. Or you go on the internet, it's easy to be overwhelmed. We take the overwhelm out. We take the brain damage out. You get your Healthy Start Pack every month. You get your Mighty 90 Essential Nutrients every month, your probiotics, your nightly essence, your ultimate enzymes. They come right to your door. If you're an entrepreneur, you can even have a business built into this. If you're interested in learning more about it, CJ and Linda and Cheryl, we're all happy to help you out. I'm happy to help you out as well if you have questions. I wish I had more time to talk, but you guys have been great. Thank you so much. I got to go catch a plane. God bless you all. I hope you feel strong and more powerful and more in charge of your health. Take care, everybody. I hate to run. What's that? I'm going to be breathing deeply. Thank you, doctor. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned stomach bitters.
Swedish bitters. We don't have any. No, we don't have any of those.
So Swedish bitters.
Swedish bitters.